Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to my world of darkness after long last. I really actually didn't think we were going to get back to this for a little while, simply because of how much work I had to do on Black Sheep, but we are done with Black Sheep. We actually wrapped up Black Sheep a couple months ago, and we've had a chance to play through The Sacrifice for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, located in the Chicago book. For those of you who do not have the Chicago book, not only are you going to find amazing plot lines, great NPCs, you're also going to find all of the information you need on Clan Lasombra, because this area is the key location to how the Camarilla is allowing interactions with the keepers. So that's just a fun little thing. But we went ahead and played through The Sacrifice, and it took us about 3 game sessions. And I'm going to go ahead and relay to you what exactly happened. We're going to go back to our original recap format, exactly how all of this went around. I put up a poll months and months and months ago, around the time that we started Black Sheep, to see if people were more interested in the storytelling format like this, where I just talk to you guys one-on-one, or if you guys were actually interested in listening to our game sessions. And I had my little personal pet project that I wanted to do with Black Sheep to see how it would come out. Hurricanian definitely stopped me from being able to do a good portion of what I wanted to do when it came to editing and things like that. But we are going to go on popular demand back to this standard recap format, like I was saying. So with this one, I'm going to go ahead and cover everything that happened in The Sacrifice in one video. So this might be a little bit longer. I'm not really sure how long this is going to take, because there are quite a few chapters, but they are very fast-paced chapters. Now, this game module can actually be set for either Camarilla or Anarch. We are obviously going Anarch because we have our own little long ongoing story with the Kindred of Portland, Oregon, and how they've been basically forced into this deal with both the Camarilla and the Sabbat to be able to come in, take Kritizius's Kindred in Training course, and hopefully come out better on the other end. And after months and months of dealing with everything that's been going on in Chicago, we are now getting back to seeing what's going to happen with our group and how that works. The PCs have been called together by Damien, the sheriff of Chicago, at a local Old Holly's fast food restaurant. They are told nothing but that this is business ordered by the prince, and the need for a meeting is urgent. Damien has already arrived, sitting in a booth, with an uneaten burger and fries in front of him. His normal laid-back demeanor is instead one of barely concealed nerves that can be picked up with an easy wits plus insights roll. A bulky brown paper envelope lies neatly in front of him on the red plastic table, and his right leg restlessly taps against the floor. So what we had decided to do on this part is change it up just a little bit with our normal characters. Serendipity had decided that she was tired of playing Elle. It was just a character that did not fit for her very well, and after the events of Black Sheep and what happened with her character in that, decided to step back for a few weeks. Just a chance to clear her head and come up with something new and interesting. Our dear Justin, our Toreador Anti-Tribu, who's played by Cole, was also not able to come due to work reasons. And on the first night that we actually started this, Smiles, William, the Malkavian, who's played by David, was also unavailable. So in this first session of The Sacrifice, we have Tinia, we have Annette, and we have Gabriel. These 3 Kindred, which worked out very well because these were actually the 3 individuals who are marked down as anarchs from Portland, even though Annette kind of just got wrapped in all of this, and Gabriel is actually a ex-member of the Sabbat who's who's more in line with the cult of Mithras than anything. But all that aside, these three individuals who are noted anarchs of Portland have received this call, along with Jonathan Harker, the Tremere member of their little coterie who's gotten dragged along with this. When they gather together outside Otoli's, they can see Damien inside looking nervous. And they have a little bit of a confab trying to figure out exactly how they're going to handle this situation. They decide just to go in and see what's what, how exactly all this is happening. As soon as they walk through the door and place themselves in front of him, he slides the envelope across the table and gets up to leave, saying, "The prince only requested that I ensure the envelope reached you. The 4 phones inside are burners and connect to one of my people. You'll get 1 use out of each of them, and then they'll go dead. Clear? Enjoy the rest of your evening." He then departs the restaurant. This was a complete shock to the coterie. It really was, because over the last few months of being able to play and get to know Damien as a character, they've actually come to be on a friendly basis with him. He and Baby's Chorus tend to play in the nightclubs that they hang out at, and he's kind of felt like he was thrown into this unwillingly as much as they were. When the characters open the envelope and they find the burner phones, and they find a set of car keys, and they find a handout letter from the prince itself that says, "My trusted kin, I write to you in complete confidence. Confidence you will remain silent about the information in this letter, and confidence you will perform this task completely and swiftly. Tomorrow night a delegation will arrive at O'Hare. You are to safely guard and transport them from the airport to the 3rd floor of the Succubus Club the night after at 2100, no later. The night of their arrival, it is your task to keep them somewhere safe, bringing them to the Succubus Club on the night following. I should not have to mention, I expect the delegation to arrive at the Succubus Club intact and well rested. Our visitors consist of 2 individuals of our kind, a small-framed younger East Asian woman with long dark hair, and a bald-bearded, older white gentleman, who I choose to describe as unkempt. Meet the delegation at 2200 outside the Terminal 5 Hendrick's Grocers in the arrival area. A car will be ready for you at the Terminal 5 parking lot in Zone H22. The registration and keys for which are also in this envelope, though you may wish to arrange an additional car for your own. Do ensure certain troublemakers from within our social club do not disrupt your task. I am confident you are aware of whom I speak, but for clarity's sake, I have enclosed files Damien compiled. Use the night you receive my message to subtly kill the fire before it begins. Do not cause unnecessary trouble by leaving stains on the ground. Merely subdue potential issues temporarily for your own and the city's sake. I don't want anyone feeling they need to cause a rebellion due to your actions. Payment for the successful completion of this task is guaranteed, and in keeping with my family's generosity. Sincerely, Prince Kevin Jackson. Watching the players read this was so interesting. I have found as a storyteller that it is very useful if there are handouts in a book marked out to go ahead and print them out. Type them up, print them out, and hand them to the players. Now, on top of the letter, they also got 3 other handouts inside of that envelope. One of them was a dossier on Noah Gruel, also known as Flyboy. This member of our club followed in Tyler's footsteps with his interest in the city's air travel system. He believes O'Hare his territory and claims to control everything entering and leaving Chicago via flight. He will undoubtedly raise questions about our guests and their business, and perhaps prevent them from passing security. Though we suspect they have methods of bypassing mundane checks. He has influence over the Department of Aviation's executive team, specifically one Felicity Miller. Now, if you guys remember, they came into contact with Felicity Miller twice at this point. One when they first arrived in Chicago, and another when they went to go meet with Flyboy earlier on in this story. Charles Dawson, alias Crook. When Charles becomes bored, unnecessary drama occurs, and we believe he heard of this coming delegation. Therefore, he will undoubtedly do whatever he can to draw unwanted attention and disrupt proceedings. He will most likely send out thugs to spy on you and sabotage your mission, just to prove his relevance in the city. He will be around Crook's Lounge near Rogers Park, as they are currently renovating. Genghis, no alias. If you haven't lived under a rock for the past few years, you would know about Genghis and his alternative methods of dealing with his hatred for the elite club. He would happily go out of his way to release Prince Kevin Jackson's hold on power. When he hears about a foreign delegation arriving, and I suspect he will, due to his high status among the local rebels, rest assured, Genghis will have eyes on the airport. I cannot say where he is at the moment, as his movements are completely unreliable. An informant tells me he has a haven on the Gold Coast at 126 East Cedar Street, but security will be tight. These two Kindred are individuals that in-game they've never really run into yet. These two troublemaking anarch Kindred, which is fun because they themselves are anarchs. I gave them a little bit of background, things they would have heard from in the city on these two Kindred, who they are for the most part, so that they are not walking in completely blindsided with these characters. They know what clans they're talking about. One being Bruja, one being a Nosferatu. They know what their status is in the local anarch community and exactly what kind of detriment it could cause that these Kindred, one of which is assumed to become a Baron as soon as she gets back to Portland, what kind of drawbacks it's going to be when acting directly against the anarchs in Chicago for this type of thing. Now, the book goes on to part one. That was just the prologue. Pave the Way is what happens the night the characters receive the dossier. They receive the information on these characters, and they have different options here. Approaching Flyboy is the first option. It goes over how to handle things through bribery, through combat, through manipulation. It's actually pretty interesting. It goes on to approach Crook, Charles Dawson, and then again Genghis. Now, the way that my characters handled this was such an interesting thing. They went in and talked to Flyboy. They go to the airport. They actually track down Flyboy through talking to airport security, followed by Felicity Miller, and they're able to actually just have a nice, quiet sit down with him. They already think that he's a rather charming individual, and they're not really looking forward to any kind of active combat with him, especially not in a situation where they are now, where they are seeing more and more heightened weapons coming in and out of the airport for security. These guys are packing. They have this is not just standard security, and they've already got suspicions that the CIA may actually have tabs on something else going on inside this airport. But when they sit down, they explain to them the situation honestly and cleanly. They basically tell them that, look, we think that the prince is actually setting us up so that we will fail, so that there's reason for the Camarilla not to trust this and possibly pull out of their deal. Flyboy is ready to just go ahead and let everything happen after a good 5 minutes of talk. There's really not much that happened on that. It was simple honesty. I think there might have been like 1 or 2 social challenges just to get him to really accept what was going on and the fact that they're not really working for the Camarilla, they're working towards their own interests. That's when things start to get a little crooked. Because the next thing that they do is they approach Charles Dawson. As mentioned in his files, Crook will be available in Crook's Lounge on the north side of Chicago. The bar is visibly closed and barred off with large warning signs on the front door reading, "Please wear safety equipment when entering." All doors will be closed off, and there is no sign of life if PCs look through windows. This actually kind of got out of hand and almost went to a full-blown combat, which I love when multiple characters go after one NPC that they don't quite know very well. They decide that instead of trying to attract him in any other fashion, that they're just going to try to go into his area. This is a known personal location. This is his turf. And what they decide to do is pick the lock and go in. There are ways of handling things in this book that would have gone really well, and the frustrating combat that occurred is not really something in here. They have them walking around the corners of the buildings and looking through windows and everything else, but nothing ever says, "Hey, let's just do breaking and entering." So they do that, grabbing his attention, and eventually he ends up coming up the stairs down from the basement with a steel pipe in his hand, and him hitting the wall with the steel pipe was enough to actually intimidate the players. But the arguing back and forth was just such a funny ordeal. They just kept going on and on about just stuff that didn't really matter, like as if they were just trying to give him other things to think about. But what that ended up doing is actually drawing his attention to the situation that they were in more than anything. They left really not in a good place when it came to Crook. And then we've got Genghis. The very first thing that they do is they approach Genghis's haven in the Gold Coast, which they don't really do well when it comes to anything. When it comes to this, it was kind of funny. They try to get in, but it's locked. There's a night guard. Eventually, they end up calling in some favors and finding out that he's actually at a nightclub called the Mohawk. When they get into the Mohawk, however, it's another one of those just tense conversations. They end up going through this place, which is very 1980s industrial goth yuppie club kind of thing. Like, everybody's dressed better than they should be. They're all doing illicit drugs all over the place. The music is overly loud. And they end up finding Genghis sitting at the top of the stairs with a woman. And then just with instantly his behavior, his bravado, even his look really called back memories of Tinia dealing with Miles Trent, who is the Bruja who helped get them here. He's also technically, I guess you would consider, a family member. He is the broodmate of Tinia's sire, so I guess her uncle. And watching how they interact is just interesting, because instead of trying to lead him off or buy him off or even fight him, what they end up doing is setting up a whole new idea for how they're going to screw over the prince. Which, with a few successful social challenges and everything, Genghis actually falls for. The concept of, oh, these people need a place to stay, this delegation needs a place to stay, bring them by my haven. And the idea is that they're just going to attack them there and screw up whatever the prince's plans are with that. So basically they tricked Genghis to stay home. That's it. That was our first night. Not much happened after that. They spent the majority of the night just talking and trying to figure out how exactly things were going to go down. Now, what they did not expect came the next night when they arrived and they waited by the grocers at Terminal 5 to pick up the delegation. And they were met with two individuals aptly described as the Prince had. And were able to just walk right out of the airport without an issue. The two who introduced themselves as Sierra and Malikov are very opposing figures. We have the woman who is a very beautiful, slight-framed, quiet individual who's just trying to keep things together, and Malikov, who's one of the most impatient bastards that they've ever met. They end up getting another car. That's actually right. The very first, I'm sorry, I forgot about this. They decided that they were going to just ditch the Prince's car completely and get a different car altogether. And they ended up going to the One-Eyed King, who heard the story and decided to get them a church van. I'm sorry that I left that out of the first part, but it's just something that didn't come up until just now. But anyway, so they load him into the church car, and the Lasombra, who the delegation are just instantly like, is this a joke? Like, is this an insult? Do you have church vans simply because you know what we are? And the best part is they did not. None of the Kindred knew what they were until they were in the van. And at this point, David is playing that game. He was feeling better. He had been sick the week before, and this is the next game session. And so he brings in Smiles, who's completely left out of everything. So Smiles at this point is actually working with his sire. He's the man who works closely with the mental institution, but he's not actually a doctor or anything like that. He gives many fake names, and even poor Smiles doesn't know exactly what the hell is going on with his sire. But while all this is happening, and they're trying to get the delegation from point A to point B, Smiles has actually been filling in his sire on all of the information he can about the Portland Kindred. He has decided that he's going to go to Portland himself, and I don't know. He wants to cause some problems. He's a Malkavian. He works directly with Juliet Parr, who's the Justicar for Clan Malkavian, and he wants to make sure that the Portland Anarchs are not going to screw up this deal that has been given. So he wants to be on there. So Smile spends a good portion of this evening helping his sire pack to go to Portland. Fun things start happening as they're leaving the airport. Most of it gets along pretty well because as the Anarchs who now have the delegation are running around trying to do things, we have Smiles, who's also running around trying to do things. And as they pick up the delegations, he's broken off away from what his sire had him doing. He ends up calling them and trying to figure out how exactly he can get involved. He's trying to implant himself and to, I don't even know really what the hell William or Smiles' goal is here, if he's just an agent of chaos or what. But he ends up retracking various steps that the players had the night before. He ends up finding his way, I think, through calling the players and trying to figure out what he should be doing. They tell him to go keep an eye on these two troublemakers, and they send him to Crook first off. This was probably one of the most hilarious moments ever. If anybody's ever seen those, if anybody's ever seen, I'll put a link in the description, the What's Your Name Ezekiel Tony thing. If you watch that happened in my game between Smiles and Crook. If my game was going to continue being set in Chicago, Smiles just gained a rival. He went in, he started some shit, and basically made a Nosferatu who hates him very much. And they're screaming at each other from across the street, flicking each other off, and screaming "fuck you" at each other at the top of their lungs. It was highly amusing. We had to stop playing game for a little while back and forth there because we could not stop laughing and quoting that damn video. But it was, oh my god. It was hilarious and it was frustrating at the same time. He eventually makes his way to Genghis's penthouse again, and inadvertently informs Genghis that he has been lied to by the other group. So as the other group is now leaving O'Hare Airport, they find themselves being shepherded further and further out into the woods and farther away from their destination. And they're trying to figure out where exactly they're going to stow these two kindred over the day, since they're not needed for the night before. And they've decided, oh, let's just go to a motel outside of town to avoid everything. So now, because Genghis is aware of the deception, he sets up this damn roadblock, and they end up getting stuck in a queue that is completely made up from Genghis. It's just Genghis and his friends causing trouble. This was actually handled very smoothly, in my opinion. Genghis comes up to the window and ends up talking to Gabriel, who's driving. And this is probably the most socially active I've seen Gabriel as a character, because he's so disconnected from humanity. He's actually he's a follower of the Path of Night, which we made it so that it could be run in V5. But he basically convinces Genghis the same thing that they convinced Flyboy, that getting these people to the prince is going to be the best interest. Not because if they fail, it proves that the Anarchs can't be responsible to run a city, but he informs Genghis that the delegation is Lasombra. And since they're Lasombra, they're going to cause more trouble than anything else. It's going to cause an uproar in the city. There's going to end up being a fight. Camarilla blood is going to flow through the streets. Genghis likes this idea. After they are able to get past this area, and because of the traffic jam, they actually need to stop and get gas, at which point Smiles is able to catch up with them on a motorcycle. So he does catch up. And they do decide that they're going to stay at a motel. And they end up staying at the Sun God Motel, where they pick up the mattresses from the two beds, they put them over the windows, they stuff the bathroom door with towels, and everybody just gets where they're going to go. The way that the sleeping arrangements worked in this was Sierra and Malakov and their two ghouls, because they do have two ghouls with them. Sorry, that's again, it's just stuff that didn't really make much of a difference, other than the fact that there's 4 of them, not 2 of them. They end up setting up areas out in the main room, bunched up blankets and things like that, where they can just basically die for the day. The rest of the Kindred, however, Tinia and Annette end up torporing for the day in the bathtub. Smiles ends up crawling into a closet, and the linen closet in the bathroom, and Gabriel passes out on the floor near Harker, who also passes out on the floor. And that's where we ended that session. So night 2 done. Night 3, however, things get bad. I ended up throwing everybody a test to see if they would wake up. A standard humanity test to check to see if they were going to wake up from the situation that they were in. Luckily, Smiles and Annette woke up and found 2 individuals in their room dousing everything, the floor, the walls, the furniture, and the Kindred with gasoline. They were able to summon up enough power and strength to rush them, which was actually it was pretty interesting to watch too, because you got 2 standard humans and 2 Kindred. And keep in mind that the sacrifice is actually built for starting a chronicle off on, but these characters have been around for quite some time, and these guys didn't do very well. Yes, they were all down traits because of how drowsy they were, but the very first thing that happened was Annette bum rushes one of them and just completely ravages them with feral weapons. Smiles, on the other hand, does what he does and takes a plastic clear acrylic plunger, but I don't know why I'm holding it up as if I have one, but he takes the plunger, and as the guy goes to call out, rams it down his throat, killing him instantly without the other kindred even knowing what the hell is going on. A quick look at the clock on the side table says that it's around 8:30 in the morning when all this is happening. And Annette at least has the foresight to rush over and shut the door before the sunbeams have a chance to shine through. Which, if vampires catch on fire during the daylight hours, if they get caught in the sun and everything's doused in gasoline, that whole motel's going up. So they go ahead and they kept that out, and they wake up Tinia with enough time to let her know what happened, and then everybody passes out. At that point, I personally don't know why they decided to wake up Tinia, but you know what? They're going to do what they're going to do. That evening, they all wake up completely saturated in gasoline, and they realize something else. The two ghouls are missing. Malakoff is missing. And Gabriel is missing. So one of their Sabbat is gone because Gabriel, and Malakoff, who's not the nicest guy in the world, and his ghouls are gone. So that did not go very well. But it was actually clever to watch how they handled this whole situation, because this could be very, very bad. The first thing that they did is Tinia goes down to the laundry room of the motel and just stole a bunch of clothes, which was great because I pretty much just let them choose what kind of things their characters typically would not wear. And of course, Annette puts on an "I'm with stupid" shirt with an arrow and constantly stands next to Smiles after that. We've got Hawaiian shirts, t-shirts, just crappy clothing. But they wake up, Tinia wakes up, and Harker wakes up, and they catch on to everything that's going on. They just decide they're going to get the hell out of there. So as they're leaving the motel, they decide that they don't fully trust the church van at this point, just in case there's bombs or anything like that. So what they end up doing is going through the guy's pockets that douse them in gasoline, finding keys, finding their car, and stealing that. One last final move before they leave, as everybody's getting out of the car, is they pull the fire alarm, wait a few seconds, and then light the room up, destroying whatever evidence might be left behind. Which is probably good, although I'm pretty sure a burned body with a plunger shoved down its throat is going to be really, really bad for the Chicago Kindred to have to deal with. But I think at this point in time, the players, not the characters, but I think the players were like, this is not our problem, because we're not staying in this city very much longer. They have already come to the conclusion that this is the final exam, that the reason why Prince Kevin Jackson has basically ordered them to do this little errand for him is because they think that this is the final exam of their stuff, and that if they can succeed in doing this, they graduate and they can move on. The players then head to the Diamond Yama, because Sierra suggested going there first. Apparently she has some connection with it. Now when they walk in, the girl behind the counter is just like, oh, we're gonna have to boot these ill-dressed individuals out. But then she realizes that Sierra is there, and apparently she has a suite and a bunch of stuff already set up. But as they're walking towards the elevator, Justin is walking towards the exit. Justin, our dear Toreador Antitribu. I don't know if I should really call him a Toreador Antitribu. He does so much hanging around with the Anarchs at this point, right? So he's walking out, he meets up with them, and they decide that the boys, being Smiles and Harker, are going to go up to Justin's room, take showers, and borrow some clothes, which is great because they barely fit anything. Smiles steals a tux, Harker steals a suit, but like he looks gangly and stuff, like the sleeves only come up to the top of his wrists and things like that, because Justin's actually a rather short individual. The girls, on the other hand, they head up to Sierra's suite, which is the entire top floor of the damn Diamond Yama, where they end up taking showers and borrowing her clothes, and then decide to walk to the Succubus Club because Sierra went ahead and had the stolen car that they have towed. That way, it's just one less thing that they actually have to worry about. The scary part thing is, again, they do not have Melenkov, and they're not really sure exactly how the prince is going to handle such a thing. It's pretty terrifying because they could not figure out who exactly attacked them or not. And something really interesting is because of how crazy everything gets in the rest of this plot line, they never actually do figure out who were the attackers. When they all get to the Elysium, it's great because I actually have all the players in one damn place for a change. It's getting a little difficult to do that. When they finally get into the Elysium, though, I explain that pretty much every kindred they've ever seen and a bunch they have not met are here in the city. That the entire Primogen Council is here, that their teacher Clezius is here, that Damien and Baby's Chorus is on stage playing this new wave soft jazz, which is a little bit out of their wheelhouse, but they seem to be doing well, and that they're all basically enjoying making fun of Annabelle's paintings when she's not within earshot. But as soon as they walk in and the prince realizes exactly what's going on, and they can see all the harsh looks and angry comments and backhanded gestures from the kindred of the city towards their guest, they hear, "Welcome to our Elysium. As always, it warms this old body to see so many familiar faces among our numbers tonight. I want to take this opportunity to thank our escort group, or should I call them the bodyguards after last night's activity. It's kindred like you that make unlife just a tiny bit easier, so props. So without more ado, I introduce the elephant in the room, as they say. I'm aware my decision to invite such uncommon guests into Chicago is controversial, to say the least. However, I'm sure there's a good reason why our dear guests have embarked on such a dangerous journey into Camland. If it wasn't clear already, our visitor is of Clan Lasombra. Please approach the stage under a banner of peace. We're all interested into what you have to say." Sierra steps up, and just as Jackson is about to continue his speech, she grabs the mic out of his hand, steps to the edge of the stage, and proclaims, "I am Sierra von Buris. My presence in this town is not a matter of flight, betrayal, power hunger, or destruction, as mentioned by many in this Elysium tonight. My brother and I have been sent here as representatives of our clan with one purpose in mind. Our clan wishes to join the Camarilla." I really try hard not to have my players read the modules that I tend to run. I'm trying very hard to run all of the V5 modules. In fact, we got a new one for New Year's that I do plan on adding to the roster as soon as our game catches up to New Year's. But the looks on their faces, jaws dropping, eyes popping out, it was amazing. And then all of the NPCs are just starting to freak out and yell and scream and talk about betrayers and how they don't want Sabat in their city and things like that. And as the prince stands up and orders the rest of Clan Ventru to take front stage and start dominating everybody in the Elysium to calm down, the Bruja and a lot of the Anarchs just start filing out at that point. Sierra is taken to safety by Damien, and suddenly I throw an awareness check to Smiles, and he realizes that he cannot find Jason Newberry, the Primogen of Clan Malkavian, anywhere. So there's a lot of commotion, to say the least, with everything that's going on. And as they are running around and trying to get everything settled down, they eventually end up talking to the prince, who tells them that Sierra has been moved downstairs into the labyrinth below the Succubus Club for her own safety. And if they want to go talk to her, the passcode to give the doorman would be just the word Loden. This is interesting because Justin has decided that he's just not dealing with this stuff. He's terrified. Justin has begun to regress as a character. The constant chaos that this group of anarchs is bringing is actually bringing out more of a cowardly sense in this character, which I actually do think is kind of character growth. It shows that he and Gabriel have not been able to keep with Sabbat customs and rituals very well. And in the system that we're using, which was done with this Sabbat book that I've done a review on, it was beautifully done. The way that touchstones work in the Sabbat is that they are the rituals of the Sabbat. They haven't been able to do these rituals. The Vaulderie is slipping. The way of being able to keep themselves in control of themselves is gone. And they both, Gabriel and Justin, seem to be becoming more and more humane as time goes by. I don't see them being able to pull themselves off, but I do see themselves being able to basically lose themselves from their Sabbat personas over time. Not really being able to say where that's going to go, unfortunately, at this point in time. It takes them a while to decide that they're going to go down and meet up with Sierra and try to see exactly if there's anything they can do to help. They feel, especially Tinia, feels incredibly responsible for what's going on at this point. But as they're trying to figure out where they're going and try to get a hold of Damien and everybody else trying to just like work past the chaos that is Elysium at this moment, Justin has already slipped downstairs and decided that he's going to go snoop around inside this labyrinth. But when he gets there, because it has taken so long, somebody else beat them to it. As Justin's going downstairs, he sees a person who's on the security staff at the Succubus Club running past him, looking like he's received quite a beating. He goes behind the stage on the ground floor and finds a stairway that leads down into the labyrinths. He finds a mess as things that line the walls, bar stools, chairs, tables, boxes of empty bottles of wine and things like that are all just smashed all over the place. There has been a commotion. And he also hears flesh smacking flesh and looks through the one closed door at the end of the hall and sees Jason Newberry, or Son, the Malkavian clan primogen, beating the hell out of Sierra, the Lasombra dignitary. And around this time is when Justin decides he's going to run up and get the attention of the rest of the coterie and tell them. And when they get down there, they start a huge combat. Tinia actually ends up getting bitten twice by Jason Newberry as Justin gets the prince and tells him exactly what's going on. So the prince gets down there just in time to see this commotion and orders Jason to calm down, grabs him by the hair, and throws him out of the room into the arms of Damien, who then takes him, and we no longer see Jason Newberry for the rest of the night. But as they are working things out, and the prince decides that he's going to leave that in their capable hands as guards, and leaves. There's a lot of back and forth in this section. This is a very narrative drawn story at this part. I think we're on like chapter 5. Chapter 4 and 5 of this is very, very narrative. You are telling a story to people with minimal interaction. And where I don't really like that for the most part when it comes to these storylines, and if I had had more time in preparation, I probably would have worked in more of a this is your thing, because the way that I like to run my stories is I like to know my NPCs' personalities, and to be 100% honest, that these are just not my NPCs. So trying to go through this incredibly detailed, beautiful work of what Chicago actually is actually not my forte, and I cannot wait to get back to Portland. After a couple of minutes, Sierra starts digging around in her purse, pockets, whatever. She starts digging around, and she pulls out a letter that is sealed with the clan symbol in wax from Clan Lasombra. She gives it to Tinia and says that the prince needs to take it. At this point, Harker and Smiles decide that they're just going to stay behind and watch her and make sure she's okay, make sure nobody else comes in. And Tinia and Annette decide to go up and approach the prince, while Justin is not wanting any part of this. He was not invited in. This was not part of his thing. He's already passed as it is. Justin has the Prince Kevin Jackson lore sheet that basically says that you've already gone through one of the finishing schools. So Justin's kind of just here as a, I don't know, keep an eye on them to make sure they're following through with what the Sabbat's ruling was. So this was probably one of my favorite parts of the entire plot line, as Tinia and Annette talk about the pros and cons on whether or not they should crack open this note. This is where I think having those handouts printed out and set up as props is a great thing to do, because I handed Abilene a sheet of paper that was folded over with this note in it. And I said, no eyes are on you. And they tried to figure out what they were going to do. With a little bit of a dexterity check, they ended up heating up a knife, slipping it under the wax to not break the seal, but to just melt it enough to pop it off, and reading the damn thing anyway. I actually was shocked. I didn't think that the players were ever actually going to see what was on this piece of paper, because I didn't expect Tinia to do that. I expected it from pretty much anybody else, really, but not from Tinia. So they crack it open. Dearest Prince Jackson, of our ancient enemy, the Camarilla, I write with full authority from the inner council of my clan, and hereby extend the offer of peace and friendship between Clan Lasombra and the Camarilla. It is our wish to call an armistice and join your flock to best survive the nights to come. I am aware this letter will come as a surprise, and you may ask why we did not approach your Justicars. It is the belief of our clan council that the Camarilla is governed by its respected princes, such as yourself, and ultimately it is to you and your peers to decide whether you wish for us at your side or as your opposition. This is a sincere offer. My delegates have authority to make deals on behalf of my clan, though please defer to Miss Van Buren for matters of politics and Mr. Malenkoff for matters of war. I hope to be a formally admitted guest to your domain in years to come, without fear of reprisal from your mighty sheriff, and without having to be concerned that we act against you. With great respect, Sir Tally, Legate and Templar of Clan Lasombra, child of Lord Leopold Vladimir, grandchild of Taliso Bravo, great-grandchild of Bukafos. So they actually intercepted a letter to Prince Kevin Jackson from Tally the Hound, one of the most terrifying members of the Sabbat. They read it, they resealed it, and they handed it to the prince, who in turn told them to go downstairs, get her, and come back up. And we had a very interesting question and answer period where I went ahead and in an earlier part of the book, in the hidden in the basement maze section, there is actually a list of like questions that the NPCs will answer. It's interesting. First one was, where is the other delegate? And she says, I know just as much as you do about where he is. Sadly, he decided to bail on our arrangement. If I know him, which I do, he's probably at some strip club showing off his fangs. He's not really accustomed to the rules of the Camarilla, you see. How do you want to join the Camarilla? Our clan has resolved to take whatever steps the Camarilla deem necessary. Or, that is what I'm supposed to say when the prince asks me. You see, I'm sure as soon as he collects himself, he will come to his senses and hear out our proposition. Why do you want to join the Camarilla? Oh, so many reasons. Most are above your pay grade, I suspect. Most are above mine. At its simplest, our current sect has devolved, and we have ever been a clan of survivors. We always survive, and we always strive to win. The Sabbat offers neither of those things. We have pride and history, but it's not as important as surviving. Besides, I truly believe we can acclimate to our new friends if we are given a chance. And perhaps we can actually make use of the Camarilla and even strengthen it. What if you're not allowed to join? That is not an option. The Lasombra do not lose. This is actually kind of an interesting emotional statement because she's so emotionless. Talking to her is like talking to a statue. And there was a very interesting thing. The players end up getting her and bringing her back up to the prince, and they end up having a long conversation about everything. And the way that it ends up turning into is they want to find Malenkov. He is just obstinate about the entire thing. He does not want the Lasombra to join. He does not think the other kindred in the city want to join. And this is actually, it was interesting the way that it worked, because this storyline is set quite earlier, a few years earlier than our standard game. So we've really been pushing off the concept that the Lasombra are not joining the Camarilla. Our situation in Portland, Oregon was set that both Deacon Royce and our old Damien Hargrave they were anti-tribute. They were not Lasombra who were attempting to join. They were Camarilla from start in to start out. And it just was a situation that blew up into things. But there had been rumor about what happens if Lasombra try to join, and the idea of they would have to bring in like they'd have to bring in some like Sabbat war criminal or something like that to prove that they're true, that they would have to kill a member of their own to try to join the Camarilla. That gets brought up, and I think it was actually brought up by Tinia during the entire discussion, because while she was making her points to Jackson, they were asked to stay and to give their point of view on the situation. Jackson loved the concept of them having to kill each other. And he told them that he wanted her, Sierra, to deliver Malenkov to him by the next night. And he was going to allow basically a one clan blood hunt for the situation. There's a lot of really confusing stuff that went on here, because we had to basically wrap this plot line around our plot line. But what ended up happening towards the end is it was agreed that if she could catch him and bring him in, then he would put it up to the clans of Chicago on whether or not Chicago was going to invite the Lasombra to join. Now, the deal affects the entire Camarilla in one fashion or another, because Chicago is the crowning jewel of American kindred. Even Europe looks favorably towards and jealously towards Chicago since the fall of London. Prince Kevin Jackson is probably one of the most famous princes in the world. And this deal goes very strange. So they end up trying to figure out exactly where he would go. Part 6 of this book is called The Shadow Hunt. They're hunting down Malenkov, and they end up going to a couple of different areas on how to do this. This is where Justin came in shining. His sleazy Toreador activities brought him out to various places. They were able to track Malenkov down to a club called Red Number 5, where they found out that this guy raised havoc, assaulted a bunch of people, and then just walked out and left. Knowing the direction on where Malenkov and his entourage, his two ghouls, were going, Justin was able to suss out where the next possible place would be, which would be the Glory Pit. The Glory Pit is notorious for its reportedly celebrity clientele. Supposedly, movie producers visit the ostensible bar for a little of what goes on in the back rooms. The pit remains one of Chicago's most popular brothels, rumored to cater to every fantasy imaginable. Situated in the basement of an apartment building on the west side, it is nearly invisible from the outside. So, being who he is, Justin is able to get them in to this exclusive fetish club. Using his name, asking if there's anybody with if there's a account for anybody named Murphy there, and they're able to find a couple of members of the Murphy clan. Rise Murphy being the Prince of Golconda, Illinois, and Justin's sire. They're able to get in and find this place, which at first it seems, oh, there's a casino, and then there's a slightly sleazier casino, but then it leads to the back area where you have Malenkov living his best debaucherous life. Employees of this place, the girls and the bartenders, are starting to complain about how violent and rude that this disgusting man in the back is being. And when they get in there, all hell breaks loose. There's so much description in here about how things can be brought in a way. Like how they can get like the bartender to unlock the door, or how they can pick the lock and things like that. But no, again, these are not new Kindred. They basically evacuate the place, get everybody out. Justin grabs one of the girls and goes, and that's his new pet. He's keeping that. But he goes out and he tries to get as many people out as possible. And then Tinia just kicks the door in. Now, this is a girl who has 5 levels of potence. As soon as they kick the door in, they just open fire. The players just opened fire. Smiles and Annette just freaking light them up. Harker is like, I do not know my place here. He feels so awkward because he always feels awkward. It's Harker. But they just open up with gunfire and take out the 2 ghouls instantaneously. Malenkov jumps to his feet, covered in blood, several bodies laying around him, and goes to give this epic speech, which is located in the book. And they just take him down. They just run over and start beating the hell out of him without him being able to get really a word out. And as they punch him and then stake him, he's just down for the count. I would love to give you some more of an epic climax, because this is the epic climax of the story. This is the violent climax of the story. There is a social climax in the next chapter. But I can't, because Malenkov is just completely overrun by these Kindred, who are pretty damn strong, and he's got a hell of a character sheet. I'll tell you that. But I want to let you know that, like, a lot of the times when characters get away, or where major confrontation leads to like massive drama and stuff, it's because somebody has a chance to talk. And they did not give him a chance. And I think that might have been the smart move here, because he would have really done some bad things to them, or at least caused some massive problems that they would have had to clean up. I mean, he already has caused that, but it could have gotten a lot worse. Justin, before they broke into the room and attacked, got a hold of Damien and told them exactly where Malenkov was. And just as they slammed that stake into Malenkov, Damien rushes in with a few of his hounds. They grab the torpid body of Malenkov and they tell the players to get the hell out of there, and that they will get credit for this. That this is their doing and that they are going to reap the rewards. And that is where we ended that night. But there is another thing that happens, which is the actual sacrifice itself. They got invited the next night out into the woods, where they come out and they find all of the Kindred of Chicago in a big, basically, pyre that has not been lit yet. Is the staked Malenkov tied to a chair. They have a discussion about what Clan Lasombra's offer is. And it's set in stone at that point that to join the Camarilla, the Lasombra will have to do something that will horribly, horribly handicap their clan. Brothers and sisters, please accept my sincere apology for taking up another of your nights. I'm aware you're all busy, but I guarantee this trip to the woods will be worth it. Yesterday, my speech was interrupted by a Lasombra with a very important message from her clan. A message that, potentially, will change our history. Clan of Night, longtime enemies, wish to join our ranks. Of course, my first response to this was to dismiss. However, Sierra came with a proposition I found very interesting, and perhaps even plausible. In fact, why don't our first-hand witnesses step forward and tell the city what Clan Lasombra offered? Jackson turns to our little coterie and brings them up and has them explain the situation from last night. Exactly what the deal was to allow a Lasombra into the city. As the prince of this blessed city, I'm not gonna make this decision single-handedly. I'm no tyrant, unlike our brothers and sisters in other cities. Instead, every individual present tonight, fledgling, elder, neonate, and Silai, has a say. And it's very simple. Do we accept the Lasombra and the potential murder of hundreds of our kind, or do we extend an olive branch and take advantage of a new alliance? Whatever we decide will be consecrated with him being burned. He's an example of what Clan Lasombra needs to purge from their ranks. Prince Kevin Jackson is such a fucking asshole. He's such an interesting prince, though, and he is a good example of one of those princes that's just not a good person, but he is covering his ass in such a way. He goes around and he starts asking who gets to join. This is where it gets interesting. I'm going to just tell you what everybody says. Clan Ventrue, Ballard says yes. I'm actually shocked on that one because I didn't expect the Lasombra to be brought in, like, accepted by the Ventrue so much. But he does talk about how, like, there's a good chance that they could get a lot more power with church and such like that. Like, it obvious Ventrue leaning on that one, though I am surprised. Clan Bruja said no. Not surprised. Toreador said yes. Tremere said no. Gangrel said yes. Kind of shocked that the Gangrel said yes, truthfully. The Nosferatu also say yes. The Banu Hakim say yes, because they're in there too. And he even asks the Ministry, which decide to abstain from the vote, which makes things a little hard on who gets to go where. But then I said Malkavian, and I turned to Smiles, since Jason Newberry is not there because of the situation that he's in currently, because he decided to beat the crap of Sierra. So you can tell what Jason would have said. Jason Newberry all obviously would have said no for Clan Malkavian because he has some personal issue, which is unknown. Or at least in my game, it's unknown. The book goes into great detail on it, but it really depends on who asks what questions to who. Clan Malkavian, being represented by William Smiles, accepted it, saying that it would strengthen their ranks. So, that is what happened. They then give Sierra Loden's broadsword, which is at this point a relic in Chicago. And there's a huge debate on whether or not they should burn him, whether or not they should decapitate him, that burning's too inhumane, which is really interesting to stop and think about with the whole situation, with everything that he's done. But like, they're still trying to put up a front of humanity. So they actually make her kill him. After a couple of tries, this is actually kind of funny, after a couple of tries of Jackson trying to light the fire and failing, he forces Sierra to decapitate her own brother at this point. And she does. And they light the fire and his body burns. And at this point in time, the Camarilla now accepts the Lasombra into their ranks. In Thicker Than Water, this is now going to make the Lasombra a more accessible clan, because I do have rulings on who should be able to play what clan and stuff depending on numbers. Not really about like power level or anything, but like the rarity of clan in certain situations. So now the Lasombra can be played more often. Jackson then turns to Tinia, congratulates her for everything that she's done, thanks her for being able to do the job so well, and then tells her, get the hell out of my city. He is done dealing with Portland's problems. They count that as a graduation and they run because no one tried to kill them. And that was the biggest thing, is that throughout this entire plot line running Chicago, and I know we took a break, but like even going backwards into it, everybody has said nobody passes these finishing schools. But there's a lore sheet that says that you've already passed. Now, on their way out, they did notice in the commotion of everything that's going on, a piece of paper that fell out of Jackson's pocket. And being who they are, they swiped it. And it read, "To whom finds this letter? I hear rumors of my 2 delegates successfully delivered the message from my clan. And dear Malenkov must lose his life as a result. I was hoping they would both return safely, but I can understand the nature of our proposition did not exactly prevent that. It's a crying shame to lose someone who served his clan for over a century, but we all agree sacrifices must be made. It seems my effort might have been in vain, sadly. While others of my clan might join the Camarilla as part of this offering and future sacrifices, I found out last night the clan I served loyally for half a millennium is prepared to execute me to show their dedication to the Camarilla cause. Cold, don't you think? I suppose that means I will have to leave your lovely city soon. It's been a delight watching how a Camarilla domain of this strength acts when confronted with unexpected political events such as this. And I might have interfered once or twice, but I'm getting carried away and should pack my bags. Of course, if there's a blood hunt for me in Chicago as a result of this letter, I welcome the chase. Send your best. Think of the status they might earn by capturing me. Allow me to show you why you do not want Clan Lasombra as adversaries. Until then, tally. And that is where we left off on the sacrifice. This took 3 sessions. It could very well take more. I would say, truthfully, you could probably push this to 4 or 5 sessions. But in all honesty, everybody just wants to get back to Portland. And when we were doing game session number 2, and we got to the point where we could stop, everybody was like, well, maybe another 4 hours. So we actually played for like 8 hours that night. I highly, highly enjoyed this. And if anybody wants a nice story to get started, not just as playing a new Chronicle, but if you want to get a nice story as a storyteller, if you want to try your hand at storytelling, this will walk you through it fairly well. And it's an interesting lore-filled adventure. Next game, we are going to be back in Portland. And I look highly towards that because not only are we going to be back on our home turf with the NPCs that I know and love, but, and this might excite some of you guys, Christoph Constantine should be making his first appearance in my game. I considered throwing him in the Chicago game, but I was like, but if I do that, what's really the reason for him to come to Portland? And I really didn't want to overshadow the things. Pun not intended. Overshadow. I didn't want to overshadow the events that were happening in such a politically dense plotline by bringing in somebody who would be there just as fan service, I guess. I don't know. But don't worry, the Kindred with 1,000 sires will make his appearance very soon. I'm looking forward to continuing on. I'm also looking forward to not running a module for a little while. I just prefer to write my own stories. But I'm getting to the point where things are getting back to normal, back to way they should be, where I can get videos out for you guys and we can have fun with that. And anyway, I look forward to spending more time with you guys and working on this more. So thank you for joining me. I am Voivode Maquette, and this has been a look at My World of Darkness. If you would like to support our channel, there are many ways of doing it on YouTube, but we also do have a Patreon. Please feel free to join. That would help out very much, especially since I'm trying to save up enough money to get to Gen Con, so I might be able to meet some of you guys in person in August. Also, we also have a Facebook page if you guys want to hang out and just chat, and a Discord, which is, it needs to be more active. Come on, guys. But with that, we're going to go ahead and leave this story off, ending this chapter of Thicker Than Water and going on to the next thing and getting ready to experience some plot lines that I know a few of the players might be dreading. Good evening.